Welcome to Dad Hammer, Bolters and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am David the Warboss, and I am joined by the most generic Space Marine in the Imperium, Mr. Medicae Steve. Steve, how we doing?
We're doing great, David. Back to work. Old Med Bay. No more, no more time off. So I had to get back in the swing of it this week. But it's going good, man.
Yeah, feeling good, feeling good.
Feeling good, refreshed. You know how it goes.
Yep, back to the grind, back to work.
Back to the grind. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Been busy. Work's keeping me busy, but there's always time for some chat about Warhammer, and that's a common saying. That's what everybody says, right? There's always time for Warhammer.
It's on every bumper sticker and
all over
t-shirt,
all over Nashville.
Everywhere.
We just see so many bumper stickers where there's so many. There's always time for Warhammer. We should make one,
right? We should always time for Warhammer. It's right next to the the Woo Girls and
oh gosh, the pedal taverns.
The pedal taverns.
Oh, man.
Ooh,
yeah.
We should make them and stick them on every pedal tavern.
I don't know if that goes together well, but bachelorette parties
not.
And Warhammer.
No, not likely.
Not really. And plus, that's way past our time. We cashed in our bachelor cards long ago. Those are all gone.
Thank God.
They were ripped up and thrown down the drain.
That's fine by me.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Well, glad you're doing well, sir. We got a good show for everyone here. A great show. Not a good show. A great show.
That's right.
Kind of a spoilery show. A breaking news show. Where first we're actually going to bury the lead a little bit. We're going to start off with just a quick look at the new factions that were announced. Not as normally that would be the exciting news, but not as exciting as the big rules leak of 10th edition. But we will start with the new factions. We'll just share a few thoughts. Imperial Knights, Death Guard, Aeldari, Admech, and World Eaters were all announced for the faction focus. We'll take a look at those. We have a couple of thoughts on those. We're not big players of those armies, but we got a few tidbits here and there. And then we'll go over the big news of the week, which is the 10th edition rules leak on the internet. And once it's on the internet, it's there forever. So hashtag spoilers, if that's really a thing. Is a rules leak a spoiler? I don't think so. But if anybody
hashtag facts.
Hashtag facts. If anybody actually cares, we're going to talk about spoilers. Nobody cares. We're all excited about 10th edition rules, and so we're going to cover some of that. That's been out there for a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up with a Age of Sigmar themed version, Pile of Potential, where Steve, you got a little bit to share with the audience here. Very exciting.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so we're excited to get started, talk about all of the new stuff for 10th edition and on things Warhammer related. If you like listening to this show, if you like what you hear, please do us a favor, rate, follow, subscribe our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you listen. And you can also find us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and maybe eventually, as we joked last time, MySpace. Probably not, but it's the definition of a dad joke is to make the same joke over and over and no one laugh but us, but dads.
Yeah, exactly.
Success.
It'll get funny one day.
No, probably not. But anyway, if you like any of this prior to the dad jokes, please do all the things, and we appreciate you listening. But first, before we get into any of the news, any of the good stuff, let's start off with the most important part of every wargaming podcast, and especially of every Dad Hammer podcast, and that is, what are we drinking? Steve, what you drinking tonight?
Tonight I'm going a little easy on things, but I'm doing a Kona Brewing Company Big Wave.
Ooh.
It's their golden ale.
Yeah, I've had that.
I just started finding the Kona Brewing Company here recently. I like their stuff. I've had the Gold Cliff IPA and the Hanalei. Is that right?
Yeah. Are you feeling like are you feeling tropical right now?
It's a good, man. Yeah, a little bit.
Whisked away.
Dreaming of the beach. Man, I don't know. It's a good beer.
Yeah.
I'm not. We talked about. I'm not a huge IPA fan.
Mm-hmm.
I view IPA like kind of like rye whiskey. There's good ones and there's not so good ones, and it's all a taste. I'm not a rye whiskey fan. I like bourbon.
Yeah.
Not really an IPA fan, but there are some IPAs out there that do it. Theirs have a lot more citrus taste. So yeah, but the Kona Brewing Company really doing it for me.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you're taking it easy. The last show, you were hitting it hard. It had about 8
Yeah,
lines of different types of alcohol in that drink, and the Warp Rift.
that was
Hopefully,
Vacation Steve.
uh, this is more
This is
easygoing, Steve.
this is School Night
That's
Steve.
right. Work tomorrow, Steve.
Yes.
Well, you got to pace yourself, as we established last time. So I'm glad you are tonight. I am bringing the Warhammer themed cocktail this evening, and again, it's not too involved. You went all in on the Vacation Steve version of the Warp Rift. Tonight's cocktail is really just kind of a variation of a Moscow Mule. If you ever had one of those, substituting some of the lime in favor of really just Kahlua. And it sounds a little weird, I think, at first, but instead of the Moscow Mule, because I'm adding some different alcohol, we're going to call this the Cadian Mule.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Cadia stands, but you may not. And which is a great line. And I can't take credit for that. Steve actually came up with that. And I mean, it's pretty great.
The mug broke before the drink did.
Let's blame it on the booze. But this recipe is 1 ounce of Kahlua, 1 ounce of vodka, and then 1 ounce of ginger beer. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of nice. It's heavier on the Kahlua, but the ginger beer does add a little extra to it. So if you've ever had a Moscow Mule, very similar, just don't have the lime in there. And I don't have a copper mug. It just doesn't seem very Cadian to me.
Oh. No, that's true.
Yeah,
You need like a black onyx mug
that just fell in the
or
mud.
that just fell in the mud
Yep,
or
stepped
it has a
on.
crack in it.
Yeah.
Maybe it has a crack in it.
And I need I
Uh,
need a space marine, kind of looking over my shoulder and looking on in disapproval as I drink
yeah,
it.
stern disapproval.
And I say that because I may start a Acadian army one day, a guard army. Who knows? We'll
They're
see.
a very appealing army, man.
I
I
agree.
like them.
I agree. Well, I'm gonna enjoy this drink. You enjoy your beer. Cheers and bottoms up, Steve.
Cheers.
Okay, we're going to start off with some news for 10th edition with the new faction focus for the week. There were, and I'll just go ahead and say it, some of these armies, or really all the armies that they showed off last week, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer on. I'm not excited for the people that play these armies, but they're not armies
Mm-hmm.
that I play or that any of my friends play. There's a couple, that have some interest for me, but they showed off Imperial Knights, Death Guard, Admech, World Eaters, and Aeldari. And we've got a few bits and bobs that we can go over. I want to start off with, and you pointed this out to me, I want to start off with
Mm-hmm.
Imperial Knights. One, because one of our mutual friends is going to play Chaos Knights, and so this is the closest I guess we're going to get so far. I mean, I'm sure they'll show off Chaos Knights soon enough. By the way, no orcs yet. Very, very
Oh, I didn't think
surprised.
about that.
I
So
mean,
what is well?
I don't know. I mean, Space Marines, they had Necrons, they've had Chaos. Usually orcs are one of the more popular factions, and I know this
Well, it's
because I play orcs, and that means
well,
they should be popular, right? Because I'm playing them.
fair
Is that how
enough.
that goes?
That's not unfair, but it is a franchise favorite. I mean, it's one of the OG factions.
Right?
Well, what first two factions really
Mm-hmm.
technically?
Space
Because I
orcs.
mean, yeah,
But
huh?
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe they're gonna get big love.
maybe they're leaving it for the finale.
There you go.
Right. Going
Like,
in, we're gonna lead or end with the biggest and best army, and that will be
bet
orc. Everybody knows it's orcs.
Bestest.
bestest. But let's go back to Imperial Knights,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at the article here, and I can't help but look at the artwork. The artwork looks so cool, just so
Yeah.
imposing. And I remember playing against knights before as orcs, and just felt like I was just biting at ankles, and it wasn't even close. It felt that way. Obviously, the rules are balanced enough where it was close, but man, it just didn't feel like that I was really doing any damage. And I think
Mm-mm.
based on what we see here, it may not get any better. I know you saw a particular weapon that you wanted to hit on, which is the Thunder Coil Harpoon. What do you think about that one?
I think it's incredibly frightening, especially with all this push to put more vehicles on the board. Um, and I'm really worried about that, man. That is a one-shot vehicle killer
Mm,
for sure. So if you had any aspiration of getting your vehicles close enough to chip away damage at a night, I guess you better hope that they don't carry one of these things. At least it's only one attack, so they can only kill one of your vehicles at a time, unless you
yeah,
have multiples.
yeah.
But
So
a range 18, ballistic seal 2, which that's not hard to accomplish. Strength of 24, which I can't even wrap my head around.
well,
Um,
you're just
AP minus,
you're wounding on twos no matter what,
yeah,
basically.
pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah, exactly. It's just shy of auto wounding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, AP -6 and a damage 12. I mean, most of your tanks and uh, very few things I think are more than a 12 wound model, right?
Yeah.
Give or take ish.
But the weapon, just looking at the model itself with the giant harpoon and knowing the scale of these things, I mean, I guess this makes sense. 12 damage seems a
Yeah,
little excessive.
it
Um,
does.
but it's also, and it's got some of the weapons, the weapon rules in here: anti monster 4+, anti
Yeah.
vehicle 4+. Is that I'm trying to think what that actually means.
Is that?
I remember reading, and you know we'll cover this in some of the rule
Yeah,
spoilers, but the anti would be the rolls of 4+ would auto wound on
I
a.
think that's
Is
right.
that right?
Uh,
Maybe it
are they
turns into
auto
a critical
wound or
hit.
critical? I think it's a critical.
Mm, yeah. So if you're
Um,
shooting a monster, anything 4+ is considered a critical
mhm,
hit.
right.
Man, I,
So it's a yeah. You're talking Primarch killer, um, Demon Prince killer. That's pretty. But you can only field so many. I bet this is more of a one of the larger.
yeah.
I would dare say it's one of the larger knights. So I mean, how many of those you're going to have on the board?
Yeah, and these things are supposed to be strong. They're because you're
Yeah.
not going to have very many models on the board. I'm saying this
It's,
now, but when I get on the board
yeah.
maybe with all of my models, it's going to be a huge problem. Am I going to feel like there's no way I can compete with this? I mean, I can't even think about trying to throw a vehicle on the board, and this thing comes in and just blows it up in one shot. I mean, 2+,
hmm
likely wounding on twos. Um, if it's would you have to have toughness 13? Yeah,
Yeah.
toughness 13, or they're gonna wound on twos. Oof.
Yeah. That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know, man.
Well, I mean the knights are knights. They should be tough. They should be
Uh,
large and in charge, and that's okay. I don't think that's a problem. Um,
Titanic.
yeah. So the Imperial Knights got that. There were the World Eaters. I'm not a World Eater player. I do think that Angron or Angry Ron, however you want to say it, is a cool model. I think he's a cool guy. Uh, but I'm not a huge World Eater player. I think the
hmm
flavor that they have going for the whole blessings of corn. I always look at these army rules when they're coming out with the different blessings that you can get when rolling 8d6, which is the blessed number, and
Yeah.
you use those dice to activate blessings of corn. Again, we talked about this last time, but the theme of each army is something that's really what Games Workshop I think is leaning into with this new edition and trying to really get everyone
Yeah.
hyped about the theme.
Yeah, my good friend's a World Eater player, and I do like some of they're kind of doubling down on their infantry berserker kind of guys,
Right.
and I think that's cool because that's really what the bulk of their army is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And then we've got I don't want to dump on them, but I'm not a huge fan of Aeldari. I just think they, but I think that's also required of me because I'm such a huge dwarf fan, Votan. I like, just dwarves in general with anything fantasy related and D&D. I'm always a dwarf. In World of Warcraft, I'm a dwarf. I just like playing the dwarf race. Maybe just because they're grumpy. I don't know. But because I like dwarves, I think I'm supposed to not like anything close to elves or things with curly helmets or anything like that.
Isn't that weird that that's a franchise wide no matter what you're into?
Yeah.
Uh just you have bitter rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's Warhammer, whether it's like you say World of Warcraft or um all that, it's odd. It's just ingrained.
Yeah. Is that
Like cats and dogs.
nature versus nurture?
Perhaps.
I don't know, but I don't really like Aldari. Anything to say there? I'm going to keep my mouth shut before I get in too much trouble.
Well, I have to support him because my son, that was his chosen army, and he still digs them. I said, "What? You picked the hardest army to paint and the hardest army to play." But thanks.
Yeah.
But nah, they got some interesting stuff. I feel like um I don't know, like these fortune rolls and branching fates, and I don't know. That's about all I got for those.
And that's all anyone should say. All right, let's move on. Yeah, I'm gonna get some hate
Right.
mail, but Aldari, meh. That's what I say, meh. Um,
Meh.
but again, I'm a Votan player, so I think that's just like you said, ingrained. I'm required to say that. Then we've got Death Guard, which I don't play Death Guard because gross. Um, I I just look at some of these models and I don't know if I could paint them. They just look absolutely disgusting, and that's the point.
Oh, I love them.
That's the point. It's what you're supposed to lean into. But they've got a really good army rule that thematically is really cool. The Nurgle's Gift, where I like the idea of it being a gift. I think that theme is so awesome throughout the entire army. He said, "No, here you go. It's a little present."
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing you a favor.
Yeah, a ring of contagion, which is, the graphic on this on the faction focus page has these little circles of green that get larger and larger. So first battle round is 3 inches, second battle round is 6, third battle round is 9 inches, and if you're within that range, you subtract 1 from the toughness. And I I like the idea of a Death Guard unit walking around just spreading this gross
Oh
disease and
yeah.
plague everywhere. And then if you get close, you're just going to feel weaker.
Yeah, this is like in all the novels and books and everything that they're this is right on the money.
Mm-hmm.
You start feeling just really not well hanging out with these dudes. But in the books, it's really good. I mean, you can like the opponents would have an overwhelming feeling of they're slowing down, they don't feel well, bugs crawling on them, whatever.
Getting a
But
sniffle.
it affect getting this, yeah, earaches,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Double ear
But yeah,
infection.
man. hmm But I like that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
It's very narrative.
Very narrative heavy. Death Guard are cool, but I will keep my distance. No pun intended. And then wrapping up, we've got the Admech, Adeptus Mechanicus, which I'm not a huge fan of either, but I don't dislike them. I'll say that. Watching some of the Warhammer animations with the Blood Angels or the Angels of Death rather, and that they had that I can't remember the name of the Admech character that was in that show,
Mm.
but I like it. It just kind of creeped me out with
Yeah,
the
they're very weird and kind of kind of sinister.
Yeah, like a sinister robotic cult, and
Yeah,
it just gives me the creeps. But
just
I respect
barely
that.
good guys.
Just barely good guys.
If if there is a thing.
Yeah, well, in Warhammer, definitely a
All
thing.
right.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about Admech. Just not my jam. But
Mm-mm.
at least they're not as lame as Aeldari. Okay, I'll stop. I can't keep going
Ah,
on the Aeldari. I know, throwing some
man,
shade.
shots fired. Shots
Tell
fired.
your son I'm sorry. Well,
He
overall,
can take it.
yeah, I'm sure he can. You built him up. He's made of stronger stuff.
Oh yeah, he
Um,
can
uh,
dish it out too.
Overall, the faction focus, I welcome it. That we've gotten up to what now? 4, 8, 12, 15 factions. I think what are the total of 20, 24, 25 or so factions, something like that.
Something like that.
Maybe I'm way off, but that number sounds right. So next up will be the Tau Empire, and that'll be interesting. But I noticed something on Reddit. I was reading some comments, and one person posted saying that, quote, everyone hates their faction.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just
Yes.
describes the internet hordes in general. You show them something new for a game that they enjoy, and if it's different than what they're used to, they're automatically going to hate it unless it is overpowered.
Yes.
I, that that just seems to be the theme. So I'm taking everything in
It's a
stride.
sad thing, but
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I think the best comeback I read about that was someone said, "Hey, if you think your faction stinks, so does everyone else. So if everyone's faction stinks, everyone's even."
misery loves company.
I mean, you can only go up.
Yeah, you could just play Monopoly instead. Go play checkers.
That's right.
There's no faction focus for checkers. You're either red or you're black. You pick your color
Mm-hmm.
and you're good to go. There's no complexity. There's no points increase. Maybe there is. Maybe there's a hardcore checkers community that we need to get on a subreddit and find the rules lawyers for checkers. I bet they're out there.
Like giant Cracker Barrel checker competitive teams.
Oh
That's what I
man,
mean.
that's a
Let's get
thing.
real specific.
That's a thing. Like a grandparents league out there in the on
It can
the.
only be played in rocking chairs.
Mm-hmm. And you can only move when you rock forward.
Yes. And
Well,
you have to be full of biscuits and gravy.
that's a requirement. Which is the reason for the rocking chair, because no
Yeah.
forward movement is really required. It's the minimal movement. Well,
I personally don't have an issue with
we're getting slightly off topic, but
it.
this is
Yeah.
important. We're talking about games, and checkers is a game, so therefore it counts. Okay, moving on. All right, man. Let's get into the big news of the week. 10th edition rules leaks. They have leaked all over the internet. That sounds gross, but that's what happened. Some you've seen. I was expecting potato cam pictures, but no. Look, somebody took the book. I'm sure they sent out copies of the book
Mm-hmm.
out to people to review, early review copies, things like that. They took the book. It almost looked like they were sitting in their car because it had like light coming off, maybe a sunroof or something. We're probably gonna get somebody in
Uh-huh.
trouble. The cops are gonna find them because they listen to Dad Hammer. But they
We
that
cracked the
we
case.
cracked the case. The way that the pictures, I mean, this was the real book. This wasn't doctored. So these are the rules, and they're all over Reddit. We looked at Auspex
Mm-hmm.
Tactics. Shout out to that YouTube channel. With going through, I mean, the guy doesn't sleep, I don't think.
He's
And
I think he just gets plugged up in the corner and just recharges for a little while.
he may be the emperor himself,
He
just
could
charged
be.
up.
He's a monster.
Hmm. Well, thankfully, he breaks all of the rules down in a handy PowerPoint, which is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked at some of that. I've also looked up on Reddit and gotten the summary of the rules. So we're not going to go through every single rule, but there are several that I think are fairly significant changes from ninth edition. If you are brand new to the game, hey, no problem. You're just going to roll into this and no big deal. But if you
Yep.
are used to ninth edition, if you came in similar to what we both did. I started in 8th and then came into ninth, and this is the first edition that I've been in ever since the beginning, watching all of the videos and news bits every single day. So these rule leaks were welcome to me. I like to kind of read through this stuff. So
Yeah.
let's hit some of the highlights. The very first thing that was covered, and I'm going to go from, if you're looking at the book, right? If that's what we're from an order standpoint. If you're looking at the book and flipping through it, the first major change I would say is the, of course, of the morale phase is gone. Is no longer a
Right.
thing, and now you have the have battle shock, which has been moved to the command phase. So in the first phase of your turn, you have the command phase, and then you're going to determine battle shock. And the way the rule is stated in this leaked, rules, or the book, the pictures of the book, if you are below half strength of a unit, so if you've got a squad of infantry and you're below half, you've got a squad of 10 and you've got 4 left, you are considered below half strength. If that
Mm-hmm.
happens in your command phase, you would roll 2d6 and you would compare that to the leadership score. From what I've seen so far, it's the average leadership is around 6 to 7, something like that. So
That looks right. Yeah.
yeah, so you're going to roll 2d6. If it is lower, you are considered battle shocked. Battle shock. You're in battle shock.
Mm-hmm.
You have felt the shock of battle,
Mm.
and the what happens is you get your objective control, which is one of the new mechanics of 10th edition. Your objective control number goes to 0, which means you can no longer hold objectives at all. If you fall back during your movement after being battle shocked, your your fallback is considered a desperate escape, which is what we'll get into here in a second. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think, to me, one of the biggest hits on this battle shock, you cannot use stratagems. So if you are battle shock, you cannot benefit from stratagems. Steve, what do you
Yeah.
think of this battle shock stuff?
When they first talked about it, when they very first put these little hints of what was coming, right? I thought, oh, well, they're moving the whole morale thing. They're calling it battle shock. What little of it I know about an AOS, I thought for a little bit, I was like, oh, well, that's just going to be kind of a rinky dink mechanic that's going to just go fast and we're just going to slide over it really quick,
Right.
but I really, really think that this is actually going to be very, very, very important to the game. But I think it's something you're going to have to pay attention to. I think it's something you're going to have to play to, and be careful with.
Yeah, the leadership in ninth edition was never really anything that mattered too much, I didn't think.
Right.
You had so many abilities that would allow you to negate that, or you could spend a stratagem. But the morale phase, if you played horde armies, you felt it more so than of course Space Marines. Never really worried about it.
Right.
But I like the change from morale, because a Space Marine wouldn't necessarily, by design, have poor morale. They're just there to, duty eternal, the whole notion.
Yeah.
But battle shock is something that to me makes more sense. You just saw something terrible and you are appalled. You can't believe that this is happening, and it will shake you to your core. So
Yeah.
thematically, I really like the notion of battle shock, which is an Age of Sigmar thing, but I like that they're incorporating it into 40,000.
And they're incorporating in a way that the some of the physical shock of battle causes this much more than that. Like, oh, we lost all these guys, so we're all going to run.
Yeah.
This is very much like, oh, a tank just rolled through everybody. We got to collect ourselves a minute. And it's not like you said, it's not a fear factor necessarily, but it is just a disruption to the whole command structure of your army, or your whole cohesiveness of your army.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of a neat narrative way of looking at it. But like I said, I think it's going to, and it seems important, but it's going to be more important than I feel like I thought it was.
Agreed. I would assume that most people are feeling that way because the battle shock rules that they have talked about thus far are kind of written off. Didn't really give them too much thought, and just
Mm-hmm.
thinking, okay, it's just another leadership. Well, we've been down this road before, but the taking away the objective control, that's a big deal, especially for troops that are you're trying to stick on objectives. No stratagems, which if you've got a particular unit that really leaned into stratagems in the ninth, of course with 10th they're leaning less on stratagems and building some of those abilities into the data sheet itself, which is I think a good
Yeah.
idea. But Battleshock is definitely going to impact how you command your army, what you do, how you react, and how the battle goes after that. And one of
Yeah.
those major rules is the fallback, turning into a quote desperate escape, which is something that was covered in this rules leak. And
Mm-hmm.
desperate escape, desperate breakout. I can't remember which one it is. Desperate, maybe it's desperate
I
breakout.
think, yeah,
Well,
maybe. I can't remember either.
either way, it's a movement feature that if you are under the battle shock, um, effect, then if you move your models through other enemies, and I think through enemies, I'm going to need more context and understanding of what that means, but
Right.
I would assume just to go from one side to the other, if you're actually going to try to move around through or become close to within the engagement range and all of
Mm-hmm.
that, what you have to do if you are doing a desperate escape or breakout is roll a d6 for each model that would come close to the enemy unit. And if you roll a 1 or 2, you lose a model. And that's not for the whole unit.
Right.
If you're just doing a normal desperate breakout, but if if you are under battle shock, then every single model is going to have to roll for this. Which I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but I think this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I think it'll make you decide whether falling back or whatever is worth it now. Because a lot of times you might want to fall back because if you have a unit that can fall back and shoot, like some Space Marines units, now this could cost you.
Hmm.
Like, yes, you can do that, but you may get into trouble.
Yeah, it's that whole risk reward system,
Exactly.
but allowing you the freedom to move. So with the new movement rules based on the leaked 10th edition rules, you can now move through your friendly models and friendly units,
Hmm.
so you're not going to be blocking yourself in anymore. The only exception would be vehicles and monsters, which makes sense. If you've got tanks, they're not
Yeah.
going to be able to move
Yeah.
through other tanks. Um,
Right.
but Steve, how is this as a Space Marine player in your Dark Angels? How is the rules, but on twofold? One, the moving through friendlies. How do you see that impacting your play, your movement strategies, but also the vehicle part? Because I know you like to play vehicles and tanks. How is that going to alter your strategy? Have you given that much thought?
So the Dark Angels are weird. They don't usually fall back. So most of the faction rules you had to roll to see if you could even were even allowed to fall back.
Mm-hmm.
So I just never did it.
Right.
Um, but the problem is it puts you in a bind because sometimes you want to fall back out of engagement so you can shoot again
Yeah.
because you do have units that are better at shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this may change that, and I don't know how they're going to treat the Dark Angels rules overall. That might be a mechanic that goes away. I'm not sure. I love getting to move through your friendly units. That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know why they
I
didn't
think you
do
can
that
move.
before. I get
I don't know
maybe
either.
too gamey a little bit. This makes more sense where you can just move through freely.
It's this is going to move things on. I feel like you could move a gun line up, shoot, and then have maybe your combat guys behind them, and they can move through
Yeah.
them and then charge. If you were wanting to like have two units double team up on a really strong unit or something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, that way you get really quickly get, but because right now you might miss that opportunity. You might get your gun line up and shoot, but you may have to go around or do something different to get your combat guys close enough to engagement, and it may just be enough that you can't roll that charge. So this will be nice. I think that'll help, and it'll help move things along a little bit.
Yeah, which is it's been a problem for every edition of Warhammer is the amount of time
Yeah.
it takes. But I like what they're doing here with the movement to allow you more flexibility, which the flexibility component is something that they're really leaning into. And one of the
Hmm.
new rules again that we've seen on the movement phase with the 10th edition leaked rules is the changes to strategic reserves. They no longer cost command points, so it's 0 CP to put something in
Yeah.
strategic reserve. You can only do up to about 25% of your army points, so you can't just camp the whole army in strategic reserve and, aha,
Yeah.
surprise, after turn two. But the 0 CP cost is a big change, but I think the biggest change to strategic reserves with 10th edition is that after the third round, if you bring out your strategic reserves, you can put them on any edge. You're not limited now.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep them out of the opponent's edge. So as an orc player, when I have pushed all of my guys up the board, and maybe I have some of my Gretchen sitting on objectives in my own deployment zone, I got to watch out a little more so for the strategic
Hmm.
reserves because they're free, and then you can roll them into the back of my deployment zone.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting dynamic. I love that you can't do but 25%. That
Yeah.
makes sense. I think there were some people that were pulling some funny stuff in competitions and things, but
Well,
I don't really know.
that's always going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think some of the stuff that the strategies that people really find every single uh, piece of the game to take advantage of. I
Hmm.
either am not smart enough to do that, which is very possible, or I just don't take the time to do Math Hammer. And we've talked about Math Hammer
Nah.
before, and that's fine. People want to do that and get every competitive advantage they can out of the game. That's great. That's just not what we do. We're more of a casual beer and pretzels kind of crew. So
Yeah.
all these new movement rules I'm excited about. The next phase that we saw was the shooting phase. Instead of
Hmm.
the leaders eat last, that the book that I think is famous with Simon
Yeah.
Sinek. This is leaders die last. So
Yeah. There you go.
if they're in the unit attached to the unit, they cannot be killed right out of the gate. I think that's because of you want to keep your characters and your leaders
Hmm.
alive, which is a cool rule. But the other one for shooting, one of the larger changes is that now vehicles, when they are engaged, can shoot everything. And they can shoot anything and everything, right? And there's just a penalty to hit roll.
Yeah, there are some stipulations. It's sort of a is this the big guns never tire kind of rule set,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
So you're not allowed to shoot anything with what's it blast. There's no splashes and something else, but yeah, I don't think you're allowed to shoot blast weapons.
I mean
Because I
that
think
makes sense.
yeah, you could injure. There's no way to be overly precise if it's got a radius sort of damage. But yeah, that's I don't think that you were able ever to do that. You could shoot out of like I think a vehicle or anything like that. You could be engaged. Say like you were a knight, for example.
Hmm.
You could have your opponent in engagement range. I don't think you could shoot those opponents, but you could shoot out
Mm.
to another opponent that was within range. Does that make sense? Like if there was another unit over here 12 inches away, I think you could shoot that unit. I could be wrong,
Yeah, I,
but
I honestly, it was always a little confusing to me. Um,
hmm.
but I mean, they're clearly making some changes, and I think there is some debate on what the explanation of the rules are going to be. There's of course going to be an FAQ, I'm sure, as soon as they come out with these rules
Hmm.
officially. Which you and I were chatting before. They may release them sooner rather than later now. But I
Hmm.
mean, this is a company, and I feel bad. I enjoy the fact that we got to see the rules earlier than intended. But I also feel bad for the organization because you got a lot of people working really hard on this to try to come
Yeah.
out with the big marketing campaign, and then everything is leaked early, and it's it fizzles a little bit. Doesn't have the impact that I think that they want.
Yeah. The tinfoil hat part of me says that this is sometimes strategically allowed,
Ooh, they did it on
but
purpose.
I can't help but think, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's awful coincidental, but ultimately I do agree with you. Because they're still using playtesters,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they have an NDA and etc.
Yeah,
But I don't know. Um, I like the anticipation.
I agree. Well,
I'm glad we saw them, but I'm kind of at the same time, I'm like, it would have been more fun if we didn't.
yeah. I mean, I like to be surprised, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. That's why we're talking about them, and
Hmm.
I don't think it's a problem, especially for us since we have some content to cover, which is good.
Exactly.
The Well, let's move on then to weapon abilities. There's so much information here. We don't necessarily need to get into all of it, but I hit a few of those. Weapon abilities. Precision is a new one, where if a character is visible, you can allocate the attack to the character, which is kind of like a sniper ability, I guess.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. It
Mm-hmm.
should be there.
Yep. Then the blast weapons, which I never really used blast weapons much. Didn't seem that powerful. I like what they're doing with the blast keyword now, which is you get +1
Hmm.
attack for every 5 models in the unit. So now if you're using a blast, then you actually get to add attacks instead of doing some weird modifier or whatever. I just like adding more dice.
I think it's going to make grenades relevant, much more than they are now.
Yeah.
I'll use them more.
Well, noted. Now I know to, guard against. Yeah.
or or am I
Or
making
are
you
you?
feel that
Yeah.
way?
Now,
Oh,
now you're just throwing me
hmm,
off.
hmm.
Mm-hmm. The couple more here. One hazardous, which is if you have the hazardous keyword on the weapon ability, you roll 1 dice after the attack. If you roll a 1, the weapon bearer
Mm-hmm.
is destroyed, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a character, monster, or vehicle, and they have the hazardous keyword, you'll take 3 mortal wounds, which I don't mind because it should
Yeah,
feel that. If you have a hazardous weapon and you're just a regular infantry guy, you should die, I guess. But if you're a character and you're made of stronger stuff, you should just take some flesh wounds.
yeah. I mean, it depends on what their weapons are, I guess. I mean, some of their weapons are unholy powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So it should hurt
Yeah.
if it blows up in your hand, no matter how tough you are.
Yeah. Anti weapons we already talked about, which is if
Mm-hmm.
you had an anti, X number of if it's an anti vehicle 4+, as we talked about with the knights, that's
Right.
gonna auto wound on a critical hit, which is very nice.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the critical hit. So whether it's a 6 or if they have a modifier. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense
Yeah, I'm
now.
not looking forward to playing knights all of a sudden.
No.
No, not at all.
I think
Um,
it's going to have to be a 2-on-1 situation there.
that sounds like a good idea. I'm sure that's fair.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
Then we've got two more sections. One is the fight phase. The big two points here that after reading the rules, the big one be base to base contact is now required for melee. So no more of this 1 inch, and you're
I
able
love it.
to attack. And then there was always the gamesmanship of being able to move. Okay, I moved a millimeter closer, so
Mm-hmm.
therefore it counted. I mean, I did that all the time, especially with orcs trying to
Just,
get a little closer. Um,
yeah.
but now you've got to be base to base, which makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if in order to determine the attacks for the other people in your squad, you've got your front line has to be base to base, and then the people, your friendlies behind you, have to be close to your base. So it's the conga line, but just for 2 lines. Well, it makes sense to me.
So no more of the spread them out 2 inches incoherency.
Yeah,
You're going to have
I
to
don't
like
think
really
so. I don't think
tuck
so.
in.
Yeah.
I think it really makes sense.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt my feelings either.
Okay, well that's important. I know Games
Or
Workshop is very concerned about your feelings.
They have my permission to not hurt my feelings, so it's cool.
Okay, good. The other part of this explaining the data sheets in the book for around it's kind of around the fight phase section, but I just wanted to point
Okay.
out that it appears that the points for each of these units in the game will be a digital download.
Oh, good.
I love it. I
Yeah.
want them to put as much into the fancy new Warhammer app that I know they're going to come out with, as long as it
Mm-hmm.
works and as long as it's not complete trash. I would love just to be able to bring my phone or a tablet or a laptop, within reason, to the game and have
Yeah.
all of my stuff updated. That'd be amazing.
And hopefully printable. Man, that'd be even better.
Yeah, because
But we'll take what we get.
yeah, that's true. I don't want the distraction. That's one of the reasons I use Battle Scribes, to be able to print it off. So shout out Battle Scribe.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we've got the leaders and characters section, which there's only a couple things. We have talked about previously that you can attach leaders to a unit, which makes sense
Right.
thematically. You have to do that pre-game. Yep, sounds good.
That's, yeah, no shenanigans there.
No, and you can't allocate attacks to a character, even if the character has lost wounds due to snipers, which also makes sense. Still kind of the lookout sir
Yep.
rule a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, something I wanted to get your take on: the lone operatives. There is a. I know you're interested in the assassins. The lone operative, the types of characters that have that keyword, they can't join
Mm-hmm.
units, but for their bodyguard, I guess. But they can also not be shot if it's greater than 12 inches away, which I think is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to alter any of your strategies? If you think about any of your units, I know you've looked at the assassins as something that would be cool to roll.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at them, but I don't know now. With these data sheets that keep coming out and all these other rules, because I'm not sure if they're going to be worth taking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty bad at using loan units anyway. I had a bad habit about just making some of my say like my psyker. I don't know, man. Sometimes I let him wander off a library and just wander off by
To
himself,
read
and
some
I'm like,
books.
why did I do that? That was useless, and just didn't get the use out of him. Because I was either hoarding him and wanting to keep him safe or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. Now, the 12-inch away is kind of interesting because you brought up assassins. I think that would be interesting because if they are alone, you would think that they would be moving more careful.
Mm-hmm.
They would trying to stay out of harm's way
Right.
until they get to where they want to be. So not being able to shoot them until they're within 12 inches, sort of narratively makes sense. That guy would be sneaking up behind trash cans and shadows and using terrain and using buildings and stuff. He wouldn't just be Leroy Jenkins right out there in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
wide open for everybody. So it's a neat dynamic. That dynamic alone would make me interested in doing something like that. Just kind of depends on, can you get your points out of them, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned hiding behind terrain. We didn't really see many rules
No.
for that in this one. I wonder what we're going to see when that's going to be revealed. As someone who's big into terrain, I want to know what I can now do, because they keep referring to the horizontal but vertical distance away from models as part of the rules. So I am curious to see what they're going to do with terrain,
The
and maybe how
only
that's going to
thing that I
impact.
the only thing that I read that even touched on this was models with the fly characteristic. Say like one of the Tyranids with wings, for example, that can fly.
Hmm.
You would just go straight and measure on a diagonal if you wanted to go from ground level up onto a building. say, you would just take a diagonal measurement. And it's just one measurement. You're not going to have to be, all right, he can move 5 inches this way and 3 inches up.
Yeah, I like
You're not
that.
going to have to do that.
I like that.
If the diagonal is in range, you can do it. So that was the only thing that I've read. But yeah, all the wailing and gnashing of teeth may be negated when terrain rules really come to the forefront, because that could affect all these things that we're scared about, or everybody's like, oh, my team got nerfed, and or this one's too overpowered. I'm like, well, there might be some terrain rules out there that everyone can play to, and make things a little bit different too. So I don't know. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I hope it does.
Well, I mean, you mentioned wailing and gnashing of teeth. I think that's going to happen no matter what. I mean, people are going to be
No matter what.
people are going to be upset because, like you said, they hate their faction. Everybody hates their faction, but
Mm-hmm.
if everybody hates their faction, then I don't know. I think just it's a game. Enjoy what comes out, and if your faction didn't get as much of an advantage, me as a Votan player and someone who got a
Yeah.
lot of love when their army first came out, now it looks like they're backtracking a little bit. I see that as a challenge. I see that as something for me to, it makes victory that much sweeter. That's the spin I'll
Yeah.
put on it.
Yeah. Don't hate it, man. You put a lot of time in it. And you go, we can start when we get around to doing a how to get started podcast, which
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about,
Yeah.
our little tidbits, and I would like people to learn from my mistakes. I think that's important in life. But yeah, you put your time into it, you put your effort into it, and you put your, you researched it, and like, man, this is the one. Well, don't hate it.
Yeah,
Don't put all that work in it and then hate it.
don't hate the game, hate the player, right? That's the way the
That's
saying goes.
right.
Or more specifically,
Especially those Votan players.
don't hate the game, hate your friend.
But how to keep your friend while hating them?
Oh wait, well no wait a minute. That we've already talked about
No,
that.
no,
That's on
yeah,
a previous
yeah.
show. Now it's
You can't hate your.
don't hate
You
the
can
game, hate
friend's
your friend.
army. You can hate your friend's army, but don't hate your friend.
Yeah, indeed. Well, there's more to come from the 10th edition rules. This is just what we've seen so far, courtesy of the someone's cell phone in there. I don't look like maybe they're in a Tesla or something with a sunroof.
We can only hope.
I just have a picture of somebody sitting in the parking lot, huddled over, a book, and someone comes by. What you doing there? What you take pictures of? And they look like they just got caught.
Buddy. Hey, buddy. Warhammer, please.
Yeah, reading.
What are you doing?
Readings for nerds. Little do they know that I'm reading nerdy stuff along with it. Okay, so let's shift away from 10th edition. All of the exciting news there. There will be more to come. Into our last segment, which is our pile of potential. And Steve, you've got our pile of potential this week. This is actually a pile that you've been sitting on for some time that you told me about. I want to say like 3 months ago. Has the pile gone down? Is it still in the box? That's really the most important question. Is your pile of potential still in the shrink wrap, or have you sought help and made it out of that stage?
Okay, so it's out of the shrink wrap because I had to look.
Victory.
But that's it.
That's a victory.
Yeah. Yeah. My attention is definitely diverted to 40k right now.
Yep.
But at the time, around my birthday, I get Amazon gift cards and all these things. Though, I love people that do that for me. I always ask them, like, I got it. You don't have to get me anything.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people will do that, and it's wonderful. So for me, it's like, man, this is like the really guilt-free money, right? This is what I get to really spend it on me, and I don't have to like worry about what I could have been spending it on. So, you have a AOS army. One of our mutual friends who's moving back to town has an AOS army. There were things about the rule system that I just were learning and attracted to. So I thought, why not start here? And I already had started the Warcry stuff. So that got me very interested. And honestly, Total War Warhammer 3 makes me interested
Yeah.
in AOS.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that make you gravitate to it. But I wanted to go completely opposite of what I do usually gravitate to in 40k, and I wanted to go the whole chaos side. And I thought the Slaves of Darkness um, army and lore and just that whole story was just kind of neat. Um, and plus, after I painted up the Dark Oath Savagers for the Warcry box, it's like this. It's still some of my favorite minis, even compared to the 40k minis, miniatures. I love painting them. I was like, man, I really, really liked painting these models. They look cool, and they're within that Slaves to Darkness. That kind of helped make my decision. I have two war bands that are, Slaves of Darkness, so why not capitalize on that as well? But yeah, it's a neat army. Uh, Gosh, it reminds me. So it's unfortunate that it's on a Molly Hatchet record album cover, but the old Frank Frazetta artwork, the Death Dealer artwork, it's the it's a pretty grim dark kind of picture of a kind of a reaper looking guy, barbarian dude on a very demonic looking horse.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has seen it. You may not know it by name, but everyone has seen the picture, and he has a lot of other artwork like that. And man, this pegs that aesthetic perfectly. So I've always been a fan of that artwork. Um, so that kind of helped make my decision for me as well. So I'm looking forward to it. As I started with the Vanguard box,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 500 points
Yeah.
ish. And then I added in when I add in those two war bands, that helped bring it up a little bit. Let's see, what else did I
You
pick
got
up?
Bellicor.
Yeah, I did print out Bellicor, and he's put together and primed, and it's ready for some paint. So that's a pretty good point soaker right
So you got
there.
about 1,000,
Uh,
maybe.
yeah. Oh, I got a exalted champion on a demonic mount or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I picked that guy up. Just a beautiful looking model. Uh, so I'm sitting at very close to 1,000 points, which is going to be just right for me. I think if we get any games in, I think that'll be a good number.
Yeah. And the Chaos Knights and Chaos Warriors from Slaves to Darkness. Um, as a old school, I used to play the game Hero Quest, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got the Hero Quest board game back in the late '80s, early '90s as a kid, and I remember just playing that. And the Chaos Warriors were the coolest models out of that. Of course, I didn't clip anything, I didn't paint anything. I just twisted them out because I was like 11 years old. Um, but that I remember the Chaos Warrior sculpts, and so when I first got into Warhammer, I remember looking at Slaves to Darkness and looking at like, oh man, those are the old school Chaos Warriors. So there's a
Hmm.
little bit of nostalgia whenever I see the Slaves to Darkness, especially the Chaos Knights. I think those are some of the coolest ones. These black knights charging in on
Yeah.
horses, steeds, and with the banners and the shields and the colors. Looks really awesome. And wow, I mean that's so you got 1,000 points now,
Yep.
and of course 10th edition is taking up most of our time, but you
It is, but that's okay.
yeah, but your pile of potential is being reduced. So
Y-
is it
yeah.
is it empty now?
No,
Okay,
Lord, no.
okay. Just want to make sure
I've
you
got
haven't jumped the shark too far.
no, I just finished up. I have final touches to put on 5 Hellblasters. Mostly because I'm trying out a most recent recipe to paint my Dark Angels hopefully a little bit quicker. I like how it's turned out, so I use these Hellblasters. I've had them sitting for a while because I already had 5 and rarely played more than that. But I like the recipe. I like how they've turned out, so I'm going to go forward with that. Then as as that new box comes out, and I should be able to hopefully rip through some of those a little bit quicker. I've got a Raven Week command squad that I'm putting together and going to work on now. The Slaves of Darkness stuff, I want to get to it, soon. That's going to be kind of my chill out. Like we get through this 10th edition hit real quick, and start getting into it. This is going to be my chill out. Want to spend some time on the models, and really enjoy painting them. Not that I ever feel pressed for time to get stuff done, but I'm looking forward to painting Bellicor. That's going to be neat. So it'll be a good cool down phase after we get through this big ramp up on the 10th edition stuff.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at some Chaos Cultists that I need to paint. They're primed.
Yeah, they're good though. Those are cool models.
Yeah, I like them. I've got my Venom Crawler, my Obliterators, and I've got Vashtor and then Chaos Cultists. I got to wrap those up before I guess mid-June, whenever 10th edition comes out. But well, congratulations on your pile of potential. I look forward to destroying your Slaves to Darkness army with my filthy Skaven rats coming for you.
Yeah, well, I want to tell our listeners too that if there's anything out there that suggestions, hit up all these social media sites that we're on and everything else, and feel free to give us drink suggestions or army suggestions if there's something that we've talked about that that we're really into and you'd like to see or like to talk about or question about. I encourage listeners to reach out to us and touch base.
Unless it's Aeldari, then I just that you can go to Steve for that. I can't help you.
Yeah, I got one person I have to be attentive to on that one. I was just kidding. They're okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's your opinion, and I defend your right to say it.
Indeed.
Well, that will wrap our show for this episode of Dad Hammer Bolters and Booze. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Medicae Steve. I appreciate your service, your time, and your attention. I hope you enjoyed your Hawaiian-themed beer, and I have enjoyed my cocktail. It is now gone. I'm still upright, still doing all right, and I'll be able to carry on my evening.
Cadia stands.
That's right. Still standing or sitting. I mean, I'm sitting technically right now. So Cadia sits.
It's a recumbent Cadia.
Well, thank you again for listening. I am the Warboss, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Dad Hammer. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, David.